Hello, everyone. So today I'm going to be talking about some of the manga that I checked out from the San Diego Central Library. For those of you that watch my library haul, you saw me picking out these books from the San Diego Central Library. I already read all four of them, and I want to talk about them in case you also spot these at your local library. So out of the four manga that I checked out, I absolutely adored one of them. The other three I liked, but I will definitely not be adding to my own personal collection. I think I do have one that I do want to add to my personal manga collection, but we'll talk about the best one at the very end. I'm going to save the best for last. The very first one that I want to talk about is Be Very Afraid of Kanako Inuki. So this is a shoujo horror manga. Yes, shoujo is not a genre, it is a demographic, and within that demographic, you even have horror. And here we have a female horror mangaka. What drew me to this was definitely the cover. I mean, the beautiful roses, the creepy, the lady with the creepy smile. Like, I just wanted to know more about it. Horror is a genre that I tend to neglect quite a bit. I will be completely honest. I am not one of those people that says, I'll read everything. Like, I don't. I love my romance. I love drama as well. I'll check out some like suspense or thrillers. Just like once in a while, we honestly don't get that much from like the shoujo or josei demographic in English. But overall, I just lean very heavy towards the romance genre. It doesn't really matter if it's a straight romance, a BL romance, Yuri romance. I love romance. As an arrow ace woman, I don't know. So when I saw this at the library, it just really caught my eye because I wanted to see what shoujo horror had to offer. And let me tell you, it is very creepy. So it does play up on a lot of insecurities that a lot of females, deal with, like aging and beauty and not considering yourself beautiful. It just makes it so creepy. I mean, the first story deals with two girls that have the same birthday. One of them is like the more popular girl that is also kind of a bully, and she gets all the birthday gifts. And in this story, they joke around this like myth that with each present that the birthday person opens, you get a bonus gift of aging. So when the old bully is reunited with the young girl that didn't get any gifts when they were younger, well, she gets the pleasure of aging 1 year older as a bully. While the other girl that was left behind gets to be forever young because she just didn't get to live. I was reading this on the bus and I was just like, okay, this is what we're dealing with. I think her art style is also super unique. I know a lot of times like people praise Junji Ito a lot for his very detailed and creepy artwork. I feel like Kanako Inuki definitely deserves a lot more praise, especially from like the English manga fans. I have never heard anyone talk about her, especially not on like social media. I did see reviews about this anthology after I finished reading, and a lot of people were saying that these were not her best stories. So I'm curious to see what her other stories have in store. But what I read, I actually really enjoyed. I'm intrigued enough to maybe check out some of her other stories. I just don't think they're available legally in English, unfortunately. If you're a fan of horror and really want to see what shoujo horror has in store for you, I feel like this is a pretty good book to check out. Another story that stood out because it was so creepy was Love Sickness, which, oh my gosh. As you can imagine, it's about a girl going to a doctor because she is lovesick, and a lot of doctors just haven't taken her seriously until she meets a doctor that finds her case very interesting because the girl is talking about her love, but she's scared of boys and she hasn't actually met the person that she's describing to love so much. So the doctor is like, okay, I'm just gonna let her talk, but it turns out he's actually real. And yeah, the love of her life has been living in her heart. So she's not making it up. She hasn't met him, but he's part of her. The way we find out about this love is just, I mean, you can probably imagine it was creepy. It was gruesome. I was just like, just even looking at the panel now, I won't show it. But it was the weirdest thing, and the aftermath is even weirder. Like, after reading this, you can't tell me shoujo is just all fluffy high school romances. Yes, there's a lot of that, but this is creepy. This story also was really creepy. It's about a princess that cannot see herself, and she just wants to know if she's really that beautiful. And so she makes a pact with the devil to get her sight, and she is very beautiful, as a matter of fact. But everyone that took care of her since she was a child, now that she can actually see how they look like, she's surrounded by a bunch of monsters, good-hearted monsters, but very scary creatures. And it's those type of stories in this anthology. Not every single story was really good, but it kind of gave me a little appetizer of what shoujo horror manga can be. So I really enjoyed it. If you do spot this at your local library, I would say it's a good quick read. So the second manga that I have here is titled All My Darling Daughters, and this is by the creator of the manga series Oku. So this one really caught my eye because of the synopsis. I thought it was going to be a good drama following the relationship of a mother and daughter. And yes, you do get a little bit of that. You do get to see other characters as well, and their stories just kind of like mix together, and then you eventually return to the original mother and daughter. Because the story deviates so much from the mother and daughter duo, I really wanted to love this a lot more, but I just really didn't vibe with it all that much. The second story in particular was probably the most unnecessary story in this book. So the second story follows a friend of the 30-year-old in this series, and he's a professor that has ended up in a very strange relationship with a student of his. He's not interested in her romantically, but the student does perform oral on the teacher. So you can imagine I'm already icked out by the power disbalance. Thankfully, the student is not a minor, it was a college student. But still, I was left wondering what the purpose of that particular story was when this book is supposed to be about mother and daughter relationships. I will say the only saving grace for that chapter was the fact that Mari, this is the 30-year-old in the story, she was equally as grossed out as I was and would like boo the dude and just tell him how wrong he was. But still, it was just kind of like didn't really understand the point of that particular chapter. And then we have chapter 3, which has two separate parts, and it follows one of Mari's friends. At first, that chapter was pretty interesting because you did get to see her very complex and tense relationship that she had with her mother and aunt, who were trying their best to find her a good suitor for this arranged marriage. And the man that she ends up liking the most is the candidate that both her aunt and her mother are just not super keen with because he has a disability. And they go on dates, and it's just kind of cute seeing that romance bloom. And then all of a sudden, she just decides that she's not interested in dating whatsoever and becomes a nun. And that's where the story ends. And then at the very end, we return to Yukiko and Mari as they mourn the death of a family member. And Mari has a very rough relationship with her own mother, to the point that, she just tells her mother that when she dies, she's not going to be sad for her mother. And you find out that the reason why Mari is so mean to her mother and resents her so much is because when she was a kid, her mother would give her a lot of tough love and tease her in a very mean-spirited way. And the reason why Yukiko's grandmother says that she gave Mari tough love was to like humble her because she was too pretty. They have a very tense relationship, and it's not the type of relationship that Mari and Yukiko has. So she basically vowed that if she had a daughter, she would do the complete opposite of her own mother. So she was actually very kind and nurturing and reassuring towards Yukiko. And here you see the way Mari is towards her own daughter, which is the woman in the cover of the manga. So I just really enjoyed that part. But by the time you get to that part, I mean, you can see the story's almost over. We wasted half of the book with the story about the teacher and Yukiko's friend who decides to become a nun. So because of that reason, I just wanted to love this more than I actually ended up loving it. It was an okay read. It wasn't horrible, I just wanted more out of it. Next up, I have the coming to age LGBT story, Our Colors, which is the biggest book of the bunch. I mean, just look at this. But there isn't a whole ton of text, so it was a quick read despite of its size. So this story deals with a young high school boy who's gay and is ashamed of that, and him coming to terms that he has a crush on one of his classmates, and once he finds out that his crush is actually pretty disgusted about gay men, he feels very trapped in his own sexuality. Our main character's name is Sora, and you can see him right here. One of the things this book does really well is show how he's actually feeling inside. So this is him putting on a brave face to just not show any emotion towards his classmates that are making fun of gay men. So right after seeing his crush also poke fun and laugh at the idea of homosexuality, Sora decides that he wants to run away to the shore and just escape reality. So Sora decides to lay down by the shore, and all of a sudden this old man approaches him and tells him that he loves him, which obviously Sora being a high school boy, he's just like, what? Who is this man? What's his deal? And he finds out that he's actually a local cafe owner. So the reason why the old man approached Sora was because he reminded him of his high school crush way back when. And once he discovers the old man named Mr. Amamiya's cafe, he basically finds a safe haven to just be himself. And it's also with Mr. Amamiya that Sora finds the courage to come out to the very first person in his life. But much to his surprise, his childhood friend overhears this conversation. So he basically ended up coming out to two people in the same confession. Thankfully, his friend now is a very accepting and very encouraging girl who just wants to see his childhood friend be happy and be himself. Some of my favorite panels in this book are the ones where you can really see how Sora is feeling in these beautiful illustrated metaphors. So here you see him drowning with his insecurities and his doubts and his panic, basically. He's having a panic attack. Here we have another page where Sora is describing how his life lost color after he found out that Mr. Amamiya basically just abandoned his wife and his life to start a brand new life. So he basically got his idea of Mr. Amamiya completely shattered. Since this is meant to be a coming to age story, you also do see Sora coming out to his parents, and also his parents trying to understand more about his life, and also his new friendship with a much older elderly man, Mr. Amamiya. And his mother also voices concern for this friendship because, yeah, it's not super normal for a high school boy to be friends with someone who is even older than the parents. And for the most part, everything is fine until the end of the story. And if you don't want to get spoiled, definitely skip over to this time. That way you don't ruin it for yourself. So towards the end of the story, you have Sora very happy to be with Mr. Amamiya. Mr. Amamiya is about to leave the town. And before he leaves, Sora asks him for a kiss. And you would think that Mr. Amamiya, being the elderly, wise man that he is, would just tell Sora that that would be inappropriate, it shouldn't be happening, he's just his mentor and a friend. I expected him to be turned down. Instead, they do share a kiss. Nothing too crazy, it just seems like a peck, but still, I was just kind of like, huh? And especially after the mother voices her concern over the older gay man, I'm just kind of like, really? This is how we're gonna go about it? And we're just supposed to accept it like, okay, they shared this moment. Sora is happy that he met Mr. Amamiya and that he has grown to accept himself as a gay boy. And the end, they live happily ever after. And it just didn't sit well with me because you have Now, who's such a supporting friend. Like, they were childhood friends, and now they're just like, no, like, we can be just friends. You don't have to have the childhood friend label. Like, we're friends. And Sora at the end of the story is just a much more confident boy as well. But that kiss was just completely unnecessary and uncalled for, and it really ruined my perception of Mr. Amamiya. Was not the worst thing as well because the rest of the story was pretty good. I would still give it like a 3 out of 5 stars, but that ending like really ruined it for me. Our colors. I actually do have volume 1 of this in Spanish, but after that, I don't think I'm gonna be collecting it. Please excuse me, my legs have fallen asleep up here on the floor. The very last book that I want to talk about is my Broken Mariko, and this is published by Yen Press. So as you can see from the cover, we have a story about friendship, and we have a woman holding her best friend's ashes. With this particular story, you have very heavy trigger warnings. And now we'll have the trigger warnings written on the screen because I'm not entirely sure I can say some of those words verbally in a video because of YouTube, but heavy on the trigger warnings. I will show some panels which I feel like would be okay. This is not for the faint of heart and it is rated for older teens. Another thing that I do want to say about this particular series is that I did see some of the reviews, and the reviews that were negative towards this story was because they assumed that this book was about suicide. Yes, this story is titled My Broken Mariko, but Mariko is not the protagonist of the story. Whenever we do see Mariko, it's always through flashbacks. So the story is actually about her best friend, Shino. She's the protagonist of the story, and the whole entire story is seen through her eyes. We're watching her story on how she's dealing with grief and also guilt. So now that we know that this story is specifically about grief and guilt, is beautiful. Literally from the first page, I was crying and I cried reading the whole entire story because I feel like grief is one of those things that everyone will have to deal with at some point in their life. So it's something that a lot of us can relate to. I can't relate entirely to Shino's story because none of my friends have passed away that tragically, but feeling an overwhelming amount of guilt is also something that I feel like a lot of us can relate to an extent. So within the very first few pages, you see when Shino discovers that her best friend has committed suicide. And she learns about this while reading a bowl of ramen after work all alone. And at first, she's in disbelief. She can't accept the fact that her friend would, end her own life. And then she returns back to her humble apartment and she decides to send a message to Mariko because she can't be gone, right? Her messages are just not being read. And that's when she basically has to accept that she really is gone. And the very first time we're actually introduced to Mariko, this is how she looked like. So you can already tell that she was a victim of a lot of physical, emotional, abuse on the hands of her father. So Shino, her whole purpose in this whole story is that first she wants to rescue the ashes of Mariko from her father and basically set her free so she can finally rest in peace. And throughout the story, we go back and forth between the present, which is Shino trying to set Mariko's ashes free, and also the past, Shino recalling various times throughout their childhood and teenage years where she would try her best to give Mariko a sense of joy and whimsy and just, childhood innocence, basically. And Mariko would always be sad. She would always be bruised, injured. I feel like as a child, you can only try so much when your friend is obviously suffering. You can tell Mariko just really appreciated having someone that actually really cared for her. One of the things that I really enjoyed about My Broken Mariko was kind of this erratic art style because it really conveys how much Shino was suffering in her panic and her anxiety. I feel like the art style just really conveys a lot of emotion. And if the art style was more polished, more pretty, it just wouldn't have hit exactly the same. I mean, here you see Shino after she's been crying and running. And I mean, there's a lot of snot coming out of her nose, but that's pretty much the state of her mind at this moment. It's beautiful in a very heart-wrenching way. Entering her adventure to set Mariko free in a place that Mariko wanted to travel to when she was a teen, which was just like a little shoreside town. Things go very wrong for Shino, but she is just so determined to just let Mariko rest where she wanted to go and just give her one last good memory, although her best friend is just ashes at this point. Another panel that just made me so emotional was seeing basically Mariko hold on very dearly to Shino and telling her that it's her fault, not Shino's fault. Like, she shouldn't feel guilty for what happened to Mariko. This is all on Mariko. So a child Mariko trying to comfort an adult Shino so she doesn't feel as much guilt about her passing. Another critique that I saw about my Broken Mariko online was the ending. And the ending, if you're not familiar with French cinema, it's very abrupt. It doesn't give you a nice polished ending. They don't tie a little nice bow. There's no happy ending to this story. So if you're familiar with French cinema, I feel like this story really is reminiscent of that. I don't know if the mangaka was inspired by French cinema. I could see a lot of the framing and also the way the story flowed just reminded me a lot of French movies that I've seen, and the fact that the story just ended abruptly and it was left open-ended just basically gives the reader the opportunity to come up to their own conclusions based on their lived-in experiences, which I personally really like. I know some people didn't like that. I just did want to give you guys a heads up that the ending is abrupt. It doesn't tie things off. That being said, I was moved to tears with this story. I would highly recommend it. And I feel like for adults, it's a story that I would say is a must read in my opinion. Kind of sad that not a lot of people talk about this story just because grief is, like I said, something that all of us will have to deal with at some point in our lives. So yeah. If you do see this at your library, highly recommend to pick it up. I definitely do see myself adding this one to my manga collection, as tragic as it was. I do see myself rereading this. So now that I finished reading all 4 manga titles that I checked out from the library, I get to return them to the library and discover some other series next time I go to the library. If you've also checked out some manga from your local library, let me know the titles in the comments. If you read any of these series, also let me know in the comments. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you guys very soon in my next video. Bye bye!